stories we have that we tell ourselves, stories that bend with time. Histories change like books on a shelf.
Good evening. My name is Lee Porteous, and I am here with the Cowichan Valley Story Group at Longevity John's and Ted Cadillac's premises. And we are extremely grateful for having the opportunity to tell in this theater. We acknowledge with respect the Cowichan First Nations, the largest single First Nation in BC, on whose traditional territory this event is taking place and whose historical relationship with the land continue to this day. Some of the tellers tonight and some of the audience are members of, well, actually, all of us tellers are members of the group that meets in the library twice a month on the first and third Tuesdays of the month to listen to and tell stories for adults and to learn more about stories and storytelling. Anyone is welcome to join us at the library. Our next meeting is the 19th of May from 5:10 to 7 p.m. for stories and talk about stories. You don't have to tell a story. You can come and just listen. Registration is not required and there's no fee. What a deal. How could you beat that? We are very grateful to Longevity John, and the reason we're a little bit delayed is Longevity is busy dealing with a tent, I believe, for some other event, for his unwavering support of storytelling for adults, and to Ted Cadillac for his patience and skill in recording and posting our evenings, and to both for their support of storytelling. So tonight we will begin, by the way, I always tell Ted this, and I sometimes forget to tell everybody else, but the title I have for tonight is I Wasn't Expecting That. And our first teller is Dominique Mescal. Is that right? Got there. Close enough for government work, eh? And she's telling a story of a new job. Dominique and her husband Xavier both found their way to our library meetings and now to the showroom, and we were very happy to hear from both of them tonight.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dominique from France, and please don't start thinking Dominique, Nique s'en allait sur les chemins, au gré, pauvre et chantant. I have heard this song my whole life. Well, I'm pulling your leg. If you want to sing in it, just do it because it makes me laugh. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story, a little story, a story about islands, new adventures, and English. Well, I already live on an island, beautiful Vancouver Island. However, one day I decided to discover another island, Thetis Island. I went from Chemainus, where I live, to Thetis Island with the ferry. And at the arrival of the ferry, on the left side, I came across Thetis Island Marina Resort. And that's where the adventure began. Why? Because I met a wonderful woman and we had a nice chit-chat together, and she asked me about my life. And I told her, wow, my life is almost perfect. Almost. Why almost? Well, I decided to leave France and to settle with my partner in Canada. I keep on speaking with my old mother, 90 years old mother, my family and my friend, thanks to WhatsApp. And I go twice a year to France to visit them. I'm still working with France remotely as a life coach and a trainee, and my clients are quite happy, even if I am in Canada. It works. I'm leading a nice francophone, French-speaking women's group in Duncan. It's a great way to be part of the community. And, well, I'm enjoying my life here. It's a great life, but it's almost perfect. Almost because I keep on working a lot in French. I have to wake up, not every morning, but several days a week at 4:30 in the morning to work with my client in France. And, well, it's not so bad, but I wish I could speak more in English because that's the way I'm here for that too. And so the second time when I went to Citrus Island, this nice, wonderful woman, told me, "Hey, Dominique, why don't you work here? You can get a job here. We're looking for someone every Friday." Wow! On the way back to Chemainus on the ferry, I said, "Wow!" I thought to myself, "What a wonderful world." And I thought to myself, "What a wonderful world. What a dream. Imagine, I could work in a stunning place to serve beers and food to very nice people, to be able to speak English all day long, and to finish my job at 4 p.m., calmly take the 8 p.m. ferry and go back home." That was a dream. Well, after 3 days training, I realized what a nightmare. I knew nothing about the job in a pub. And I realized I had to do everything alone. I had to open the pub alone, to set everything up, to serve beer and food at the same time, to make coffee, Caesar, and other cocktail. And I had to pass my serving it right certification to be able to make Caesar. I had to clear and to clean the table. I had to take orders, to check out, and at the end of the night, be able to have my cash register balance right, to run and go to catch the ferry, to be able to catch it at 8 p.m. without forgetting to set the alarm. On the way back on the ferry, I thought to myself, should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go? Well, guess what I chose. Can you guess what I chose? To stay or to go? Yes, you're right. I decided to stay. Well, why? I decided to stay. Well, I've been working there now for a month, and it's such a nice experience. First, it's very, very challenging. It's right. Sometimes it's a very exhausting job, but it's so amazing because I am able to meet very nice people. I have a nice team with me. I'm walking in a stunning place. I'm learning every day English. I can speak all day long in English. So, I'm working now every Friday. Tomorrow is Friday. So, just come and visit us, and I promise you, you will taste the best Caesar. Oh, maybe even the best muddy Caesar of your entire life. Thank you.
Now, the many incredible things there are in the world, I think you'll agree this is one of them, because that was her very first publicly told story. Isn't that amazing? It brought me back to I think I had a week when I was in Paris many years ago. I only understood one sentence the whole time I was there. And it was a sort of parking lot. I think there was a big church there or something. And there were some kids around. And one little girl yelled to her friend and pointed over. And there was a cat with a bird in its mouth. And she said, Hélène, regardez le chat avec l'oiseau dans sa bouche. Nothing the adults said made any sense to me. But I could remember that one moment in the sunshine with the cat sneaking with the bird. We all understood it at that moment. Our next teller is Kate Reynolds, and she has some history with storytelling, you might say, especially in the classroom with the Waldorf program. And she has been with our Duncan group from the first meeting. I especially appreciate her knowledge and love of folk tales and how she can adapt and craft them. She brings us one tonight, which I think comes from Sweden. Is that right? Oh, good.
Yes, this is a Swedish folktale and is called The Bravest Child in the World. There was once a farmer who had 8 children. He also had a cow called Lily-White. Now, this cow had the best life. She was loved by all the children, and she gave copious amounts of milk, which was a good thing because 8 children drink a lot of milk. Every morning, the farmer, in the summer, would take Lily-White to the pasture by the manor house. But in the evening, Lily-White would come back by herself. But there was one evening when she did not come back. And the farmer went to look for her, but couldn't find her by the time it got dark, so he had to come back home. The next morning he set out to look for her again, and this time he found some footprints in the far corner of the pasture. And next to Lily-White's footprints were some big, clumsy footprints that the farmer knew belonged to the troll of Halter Wood. Now, everybody knows that you do not mess with trolls. Not only the trolls were in Halter Wood, but also there was the green-haired witch, the bellowing dog, and the shaggy bear. So the farmer was not about to go into Halter Wood. However, he had, as I said, 8 children. The youngest child was called Nisse, a red-haired little boy. And he was so kind and good-hearted, he was not afraid of anything. And he decided that he was going to go after Lily-White. And his parents let him go, because they knew that he wasn't afraid of anything. So Nisse grabbed his stick and a lump of bread, which he put in his pocket, and off he went. Now, he hadn't got very far into Halter Wood when he heard a voice calling to him from a big, tall fir tree. "Where are you going, little boy?" When he looked up, there was the green-haired witch. "Well, I'm going to see the troll and get back our cow," said Nissa. "Ha! That's what you think," said the witch, and she jumped down. But her hair got tangled in that fir tree and she was just hanging there. Now, anybody else might have just laughed and walked on, but not Nissa, because he was kind-hearted. So he climbed up the tree and he untangled the witch and helped her down. "Well, you're a strange one," said the witch. "I was going to give you a thrashing. But now I think I'll help you. You want to be careful in these woods, so I'm going to give you a magic herb. Put it in your ear, and then you will be able to listen and understand all the animals in the wood." So Nissa did that, and off he went on his way. A little bit further down the path, he met the bellowing dog, who was not bellowing at this point. The dog was limping along on 3 legs. "Oh, you poor doggy," said Nissa. "Have you hurt your paw?" The dog was so surprised, because usually people were terrified of him. But now he was so surprised he just sat down on his hind legs and he lifted up his paw. Nissa looked and he saw a thorn that was stuck in there. So he took his knife and he dug out the thorn, packed it with moss and tied it around with grass. "Oh, thank you," said the dog. "That was very kind of you. And because you have helped me, I am going to help you. There are some nasty creatures in this wood." And so off they went down the path. Now, a little bit further along, the bear came towards them. Now, this bear, he was a black bear, but he was not a friendly bear. And when he saw Nissa, he got up on his hind legs, held up his paws, and he growled. "Roar." "Oh," said Nissa, "what a wonderful bass voice you have. You should be in our village choir." "Roar," roared the bear. "Oh, you should be careful of this one," said the dog. "He wants to eat you." "Oh, I don't think so," said Nissa. "Look, he's holding up his paws. He wants to say hello." But the bear had his jaws open, and the green-haired witch, who was also coming along behind, threw a stump into the bear's jaws, and it stuck fast. "Oh," said Nissa, "that wasn't very kind of you." And he took his stick and he poked at that log until it came out. "Oh, thank you," said the bear. "Now, where are you going, little boy?" When Nissa told him, the bear said, "Oh, you want to be careful of those trolls. I'll tell you what, because you helped me, I'll come along and help you." And so off they went down the path. Eventually, they came to the granite mountain where the troll's cave was. The entranceway was mounded up with boulders, but there was just a little hole that Nissa could crawl through. "You be careful," said the bear, "and if you need any help, just call." "Oh, I don't think that'll be necessary," said Nissa, "but thank you all the same." He crawled through the hole. When he got inside, there he saw the troll of Halter Wood, sitting beside a fire, gnawing on a bone. Now, this troll was truly ugly. He had a warty face, green eyes, and long stringy hair. Said the troll. "And what are you doing here?" "Well, I've come to get back Lily-White," said Nissa. "I see you've got her over there in the corner and she's only eating some nasty thorns. I've come to take her home." "Oh, no, you won't," said the troll. "I need her for milk, for myself and my wife. And you, little boy, will make a nice chop for our supper." "Wife!" And at that, his wife came in. Now, if you think the troll was ugly, his wife was even more ugly. She had a big bulbous nose, hairy arms, and one squinty eye in the middle of her forehead. Now, when she saw the little boy, she grabbed a frying pan and put it on the fire. It was at this point that Nissa realized that not everybody could be won over by kindness. Sometimes force is necessary. "Bear," he said. Now, outside, the bear heard that, and he started throwing those boulders left and right, and he and the dog and the green-haired witch rushed into the cave. The bear got the troll, the dog got the troll's wife, and the green-haired witch went over to Lily-White and untied her. And Nissa wasted no time jumping on to Lily-White's back. On his way out of the cave, Nissa called out, "Thank you, my friends. Now, don't be too hard on those trolls." And he galloped away through Hulterwood. It took him the whole night, but at daybreak he got back home, and everybody was pleased to see him. And you know, those trolls, they never came after Lily-White ever again.
And always nice to have a happy ending, or at least for some of the people involved. And our next teller is Xavier Gauthier. Have I said that right? Gauthier? And he is also somewhat new to Canada and Duncan, but he found his way with Dominique to the Cowichan Valley Story Group as well, and has for us this story, which comes from historical events.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you to everyone. I have always enjoyed reading biographies since I was a teenager. My parents had no roots, no land, and in my family, silence took over around the table. They left no stories for my sisters, my brothers, and I. Therefore, reading diverse biographies became my guide. These life stories made me write my own. I always carry one book, one story with me, in my pocket, in my bags, in my hands, wherever I go. Also, I need to explore human dilemma through a story. So today, I would like to share with you the fate of a man driven by a deep desire and also a huge lie. In 1519, an explorer believed the earth was round, like Christopher Columbus many decades before. He thought there was a western passage to Asia. This man was an adventurer at heart. He convinced the King of Spain by saying he had maps. In truth, he had not maps at all. He just heard of the sailor's story. Did the king believe him? We don't know really, but he trusted this experienced navigator and provided him 5 vessels. The ship crossed the Atlantic Ocean. For a week, the fleet searched the passage. Many times they failed. One ship was lost with all the crew. After weeks, one day, success. The 4 ships found the passage. Today, we call it the Strait of Magellan in South Chile. But the journey was not over. Magellan did a mistake. He underestimated the size of the Pacific Ocean. Then just one ship returned to Spain 3 years after, in 1522. Magellan never admitted the truth. He had no maps. This story was told in Magellan by Stephen Zweig. It is a literacy masterpiece published in 1928. And personally, I really love this story. First, because I am a sailor. That's the reason why we live in British Columbia, in Vancouver Island. Secondly, because I am a French writer and I love Zweig's style of writing. But above all, I love this story because his biography asks us 2 questions. Should we tell the whole truth to achieve our dreams? And with whom should we share our doubts and our unknown? Faced to dilemma, each of us has to find his own answer. And I wish you have found yours. Thank you.
And that also was a first-time teller. So yay! And of the 3 stories that you've just heard, there are 3 different kinds of stories. The first one is what we call a personal story. So somebody's telling about something that happened with them. The second one is a folk tale. Now, folk tales you've heard of. There are all kinds of them. And it's impossible to imagine. Even one may have 4 or 5 different kinds and different events and involved, but you can recognize them, and they've traveled all over. And once you have a folktale in hand, it becomes yours, and you can do with it as you will. The third story is what we call a historical story, so it's something that actually happened, that somebody is giving an account of. What I'm going to attempt to do the next moment is a combination, and that is in Victoria, they have a speech arts section of the local festival, the Festival of the Performing Arts. And in that speech arts section, I was joined for the first time in many years by one other adult. Normally, I'm the only adult there. But one of the classes involves, you choose 2 different kinds of speech art things and you combine them into one. And so what I do is I look for poems and folk tales that somehow connect with each other. And so that's what I'd like to do for you tonight. And we will see how far we get. If I forget the poem, I will read it to you so you don't miss out on anything. This poem is by Edna St. Vincent Millay. It's called Dirge Without Music, and its connection with the folk tale is the experience of grief. I am not resigned to the shutting away of loving hearts in the hard ground. So it is, and so it will be, for so it has been, from time out of mind. Into the darkness they go, the wise and the lovely, crowned with lilies and they go. But I am not resigned. Lovers and thinkers, into the earth with you. Be one with the dull, the indiscriminate dust. A fraction of what you felt, of what you knew. A formula, a phrase remains, but the best is gone. The answers, quick and keen, the honest look, the laughter, the love, they are gone. They have gone to feed the roses. Elegant and curled is the blossom. Fragrant is the blossom. I know, but I do not approve. More precious was the light in your eyes than all the roses in the world. Down, down, down into the darkness of the grave. Gently they go, the beautiful, the tender, the kind. Quietly they go, the intelligent, the witty, the brave. I know, but I do not approve, and I am not resigned. The story is called Tattercoats. There was a wealthy lord who had a magnificent castle right beside the sea. He had no living relatives except a granddaughter whose face he had never seen. He hated her bitterly, and that was because his only child, his beloved daughter, died in giving her birth. And when the nurse brought the child to him, he refused to look at it, and he took an oath that he would never look on its face. And he said, it can live and die as it chooses. And he went and he sat in his great chair that looked out the window to the sea. And he wept. And he wept. And he sat there day after day. His hair and his beard grew into the chair and into the floor bits and pieces there. And his tears wore a little channel through the windowsill, so they flowed out and dropped into the sea. Meanwhile, the child had no one to look after it. She ended up spending much of her young life, and as she got older too, hungry and cold. She would come to the castle doors, and the nurse, when she could, would bring her scraps from the kitchen. And she would pull an old petticoat out of the rag bag to give her. And so she got her name, actually, because the servants, when she came to the door, were quite cruel to her. They would make fun of her. They were the ones who named her. They called her Tattercoats. And they would laugh at her bare feet and her bare shoulders, and she'd leave weeping and hide in the bushes. And so she had nowhere to go most of the time, except she had a friend who was a gooseherd boy. Now, the gooseherd boy was always happy to see her and always kind to her. And when she would come and she would be cold and tired and weeping, he would play this little flute he had. And gradually her mood would begin to change, and eventually she would be dancing with the geese. And time passed. And then one day, everybody was awake and talking to each other about this fantastic thing that was going to happen, which was the king was traveling across the country, and he was going to have a big ball in the nearby town. And the purpose of this ball was to find a bride for his son, the prince. Now, word traveled everywhere, and even Tattercoats heard about this. And she really wanted to go to the ball. Ridiculous as that sounds, she really wanted to do that. And so she went to the castle, and she talked to the nurse, who found her weeping outside one of the doors. Now, in the meantime, there had been an invitation to this ball sent to the wealthy lord, and his servants brought it to him in the chair. He could not move out of the chair. He was imprisoned there by his own hair. And he read it, and he recognized it. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a summons. He was required to be there. So he called to the servants to cut him free from his chair and to trim his beard and his hair. And he had them bring his best clothes and jewelry and to saddle up the white horse with the white and gold blanket and the best of his bridle and saddle. The nurse came to him and said that Tattercoats would like to go to this ball, and he should take her. She was of the same status and rank in society as he. He was so angry about this, he turned and almost swung to hit her. But she was a brave woman, and she asked again. Once again, he was surly to her and swore. The servants began to gather. She asked a third time. He turned his back, and the servants grabbed her and threw her out of the room. Well, by this time, she's in tears and went to find Tattercoats, who was not there anymore. She'd gone. She had gone to find the gooseherd boy. And as usual, there she was, sad, upset, lonely, discouraged, and he began to play with his little flute. And gradually, the tears stopped, and she began to smile. And he said, "Why don't we go down to the town there? Let's go, and we can watch everybody in the fine things." She looked down at her clothes, and the tears began again. And he said, "We'll just go and we'll watch the carriages and the people and all of that." And he began to play on the flute again. And she and he and the ducks started off. As they were making their way to that town, a very handsome young man riding a beautiful horse and gowned in lovely clothing came upon them. And he asked them for directions to where this ball was supposed to happen, as that's where he's supposed to meet his father. Well, when he found out that these two and the geese were on their way there anyway, he got off his horse and began to walk with them. And he began to talk to Tattercoats. And the gooseherd boy began to play his little flute. And as the music played and the young man looked at Tattercoats, he noticed what a beautiful face she had and beautiful golden hair. And as the music went and the walk continued, he began to fall in love with her. And he fell so much more and more in love, he asked her to marry him. Well, she said, how silly is that? Can you imagine what your family and your friends would say about you marrying the gooseherd girl? And look at me. They would laugh and laugh at you. And he begged her, and he was more and more in love with her. Finally, he got on his knees and he took her hand and said, "Please, please come. Come just as you are, exactly as you are, with no shoes, with bare shoulders, just what you're wearing, and bring your friend here, and bring all the geese too, and come at midnight to where the ball is. Then come right into the room, and I will acknowledge you to my father and all of the people there, just as you are. They will see you as you are, and they will see how beautiful you are, both in how you look, but in how you are." And then he got on his horse and galloped off towards the town. Well, Tattercoats and the gooseherd boy did come into town, and they did look at all of the carriages, and they watched everybody, and they amused themselves for quite a number of hours until it came to be midnight. And then they walked up the steps, all of them, including all the geese, and they went right into the ballroom, right down the middle of the floor. And, of course, people started to titter behind their fans, and the men guffawed, and gradually the orchestra, knowing there was some kind of ruckus going on, stopped playing. And they stood there in the middle of the ballroom floor. And the young man that they'd met on the road, who was sitting beside the king, stood up and came down the steps, took her by the hand, turned to everybody there and said, "This is the woman I am going to marry. This is the woman I love." And the gooseherd boy was playing already on his flute. And gradually the people in the room became very happy and supportive of this. Of course, you know, he was the prince. He was the one that the whole thing was for. And as the gooseherd boy played, the clothes that Tattercoats were wearing changed. They became a beautiful silk white gown with pearls decorating it, and a small silver crown formed around her golden hair. And there was a trail to her gown, and all the little geese turned into little pages, and they picked up that trail to her gown, and they came forward towards the king. Everybody in the room shouted and cheered their approval. Everybody outside knew that there must have been a bride chosen. Everyone was happy, except one. And that was her grandfather, who was in the room. And he could not. He had sworn never to look upon her face. And so he made his way out, rode his horse back to his castle, got up off the horse, left it with the groom, walked up to that room, and he sat in his chair. He sat in his chair, and he wept. And the tears went along the window pane and the little stream that they'd worn before. And they flowed out that window, and they fell down and were lost in the cold and dark sea. Well, close, anyway. I forgot to say what I had worked out to tell the adjudicator to say that we all suffer grief. We all will, human beings. We will always have losses. But some people in that lose their way. And that's, to me, the tragedy in that story. Now, the next person we have is Kathy White, and she's going to do The Handless Maiden. While she is new to storytelling formally, she's not new to public speaking. She's been in Toastmasters since 2012. But in the last 12 months or so, she's immersed herself in myth and story, fascinated how the old stories can give us light in the dark, show our humanity, and describe the forces of nature and bring much needed clarity and mystery to our spirits and our souls.
So The Handless Maiden is a tale, might be Grimm's, I don't actually know. But it's an old tale that is told in many different versions, and this is mine. There lived a miller, his wife and his daughter, and they'd fallen on hard times. Very few people came to grind their grain in the mill. And so one day the miller found himself in the woods, and he was collecting firewood, kindling, and he was very sad and dishevelled and depressed. And suddenly there was a little man with a funny little hat and green beady eyes. And he just sort of sauntered up. And he said, Miller, what are you doing collecting this firewood? You're much better than this. And started to fawn a little, flatter a little. This Miller looked at him and said, yes, I am built for better things, but I've fallen on hard times. Oh, what a shame, said the little man. You know, I could fix that for you. Oh, said the miller. Well, what do you propose? Well, I can, if you, let me think. I can give you all the riches you want, said the little man. I can give you all the riches if you want. All I ask for is what is behind your house. And the miller thought for a nanosecond. Well, all there is behind my house is an apple tree. He's welcome to that. And so they shook hands. The deal was done. The miller went down back to his house with no kindling because he felt, I'm a wealthy man now. And sure enough, his wife came running out of the house and said, Husband, what's happened? Look at my dress. It's changed and I have finery. And suddenly there was food in the larder and the couch got reupholstered with this fine velvet and we've got lovely paintings on the walls and the house is completely redecorated and look at your clothes. And right before her eyes, he was suddenly changing into a nice velvet coat and new shoes. Well, haven't we come on good times, said the miller. We must go and celebrate with our daughter. Where is she? Well, said the wife, where she always is, behind the house. Aha! This he had not thought of. He turned with his wife and they went home. And he had hard news to tell his daughter that he'd made this bargain with the devil. His daughter wept. There was nothing they could do. The devil had said, in 3 years, I will come and collect what is mine, what is behind your house. So the maiden had 3 years to prepare to grieve. They had all this wealth, but they were sorrowful. 3 years, and the devil appeared. It was time. But the maiden prepared. She prepared. She said many prayers. She dressed herself in a white dress. She drew a chalk circle around herself and stood in the back garden next to the apple tree when the devil arrived, the little man with the beady hat, with the tilted hat and beady eyes, rubbing his hands. He couldn't touch her. He couldn't get to her. He bounced away from her. There's something wrong here, he said to the miller. This was not to be. You must tell her not to bathe. She's too pure. And so he left. And he came back the next week. And the daughter, the maiden, had not been able to bathe. Her mother and father had kept her away. And so she was all disheveled and her hair was a mess. And her father had even rubbed dirt into her clothes. But she stood and she cried. And she wept and she wept, and the tears ran down her dress and her hands, and they washed her hands, they washed the dirt. And again, the little man tried to reach her and grab her, but he couldn't get to her. He kept being bounced back. He said, This is not our bargain. You must chop off her hands. The miller was distraught. The daughter was distraught. The mother was distraught. What to do? Or you will lose everything. says the devil. And the maiden, she said, Father, do what you must. And so he did. He chopped his daughter's hands off with a silver axe, and they were bound with a gauze. And when the devil appeared a few days later, again, she cried. She cried such tears, and her grief was so pure that to his dismay, he could not reach her. He could not grab her. He bounced back from being able to take her away. And he left. But the spell didn't lift. They still had all their wealth. And so the father said, daughter, I am so sorry, but we can provide for you. You must stay with us. And she said, no, father, I must leave. I must leave and go and find other people who will know how to look after me. And so she left. She left and she went and she wandered for maybe years, maybe months, certainly days and days in the forest. She managed to eat grasses and somehow survive. And she wandered and wandered in her grief, her loneliness, and eventually she came to the edge of the forest and she spied an orchard, beautiful orchard, and the apples were in season. And she was so hungry, and she decided to venture out of the cloak of the forest towards the orchard. But there was a moat. Out of nowhere, a white spirit came and dammed up the sluice gates, and the moat disappeared, and the maiden was able to walk into the forest. The gardener was watching, and she went up to a branch of an apple tree, and it was almost like the branch itself lowered an apple to her mouth, and she ate. Now the next day, the gardener had to report to the king, whose orchard it was, that there was one apple missing, because the king liked to count his apples every day. This is a strange thing, said the king. Let me watch with you. Maybe she'll come again tonight. And sure enough, the white spirit emerged. The moat disappeared. The waters disappeared. She walked across to the orchard. A bough of a tree dropped down that she could eat, and she ate another apple. At which point the king came out of the shadows and said, Maiden, tell me your name. I have no name. I don't know who I am. I was someone once. I don't know who I am now, she said. Well, let me take care of you, he said, for he had a fondness. For although she was very bedraggled, although she was very wild from her days, months, years in the forest, there was some beauty about her. And he noticed the stumps where there should have been hands. And he found himself falling in love with this maiden, and he asked her to marry him. She agreed, and as a wedding gift, he had her made some silver hands that his jewelers, his silversmiths, made for her. But they didn't quite do the work, and she preferred to just go with her stumps. Now, as it happens with kingdoms and kings, there was a battle. There was a battle in a faraway country that the king was called to. And so he left, and he knew the maiden was with child, and he said, when there is news of the child, please send me news. And so the day came where she gave birth. There was great rejoicing. And the king's mother, who lived with them, sent a message. The baby has been born, a baby boy. And the messenger took the message, put it in his bag, carried on his horse, went off. But it was a long way to go to the battle site. And he stopped by a brook and he found himself getting very sleepy. And he fell asleep, leaning up against a tree. And out of the woods, guess who came? A little man with a slanty hat and green beady eyes. And he had another message. He took the old one out, put the new one in, and scampered off. When the messenger got to the king, he opened the message, and the message was that the queen had given birth to a halfling, a changeling, a half animal, half child, some kind of weird creature. The king took a deep breath and he looked out on the battlefield where many a man had lost his life. And he thought, this was life, whatever form of life, this was life, and this was a blessing. And he sent back, this is beautiful news. Thank you. I look forward to meeting this child. And so the messenger went back, got on his horse, took the message back, but he got very sleepy and tired. And again, by the brook, he stopped, he slept. And the little green man showed up again, took another message out, put it in the bag, changed the message. And when it got to the queen and the queen's mother-in-law, the king's mother, the king's mother read it and she just said, you will have to leave. You will have to go. You're not safe here. Well, the handless maiden knew nothing else to do, so she took her baby. She went back into the woods because the message read, I cannot bear that my child would be a halfling. You must kill the handless maiden and keep her tongue and her heart as proof. And so the king's mother had a doe sacrificed, a deer, so that the heart and the tongue of the deer could be shown to the king when he returned. My son must be mad. It must be the battle that has sent him into lunacy, she thought. The handless maiden was gone into the woods. And again she wandered. But this time it was different. She had her child with her, and she knew something. She could smell something. She followed her instinct, and she found herself at a hut in the deep part of the forest, a hut where a group of women lived. And these women were laughing and knitting and drumming and singing and tending to the fire and cooking great soups. They were foraging in the forest and they were living a good life. And when the handless maiden appeared with her bairn, they invited them in. Oh, we'd love a baby and we'll love you too. And so she lived with them. She lived with them and she grew with them and she laughed with them and she cried with them. And it was such healing medicine to be with the women that slowly, over time, her hands started to grow back. Now the king, the battle finished, It was time for him to return. He came home, and his mother served him a plate with a tongue and a heart on. He said, "What is this? Where is my wife?" And the queen realized that there'd been some subterfuge. "Well, I sent her away." "Where did she go?" "To the forest." "I must follow, I must go." And it said that he wandered in the forest for 7 years looking for his wife. And eventually he found a hut. He found a hut where there was a band of men who were laughing and scratching, and they were making soups, and they were full of courage and energy. And they took the king in, and he said, "Do you know where my wife might be found?" He said, they said, "Oh yes, probably with our sisters yonder." And so they came with him, they showed him the way and took him to the sisters' hut. And there he walked in. And he did not recognize his wife, for she had hands. But his son, who was now a young boy, looked up at him, and it was like a mirror seeing a mirror, an older version and a younger version. And he just said, "Daddy?" And there was great rejoicing. He turned to his wife, and she told him the tale of how her hands had grown back. And they feasted together. The band of women, the band of men, they went back to the castle. His mother was there. And they say that they're still celebrating today, if they're not dead yet.
Holy smokes. That's a little more complicated than the Three Billy Goats Gruff, right? And it's interesting to think that stories like that have lasted hundreds of years. My gosh. Can't even imagine not having your hands. Oh. Anyway, this is a bit of a break because I have some things to talk to you about. First is that the Storytellers of Canada's annual conference is in Victoria this year, and it's between June 3rd and 7th in Victoria. Now, of course, lots of people will sign up for the whole thing, but that's, several $100s. But there's pieces that you can go to without having to go to the whole thing. For one thing, there's 2 concerts, one on Friday night and one on Saturday night. And I can assure you that's at least one story in French for each. And I think one has 2. And there are some workshops in French too. Anyway, with all of this going on, of course, there's some of the best storytellers in Canada will be there. And I asked a friend of mine if she'd be willing to forego what was going on the Thursday night and come up here and tell with us. And could she recruit anybody else? So I now know that 2 of my absolute favorite storytellers in Canada are going to be here at the next Duncan Showroom. Gail Angon and Kathy Compass. Yeah, last year, Kathy Compass, I think it was just last year, she was given the recognition that her stories were recorded and put on discs and sold. So she's one of, I think they're called story keepers. I'm not quite sure. But we've corresponded for years, and some of the things that I told the first people who came to the library came from her. So I am really excited about this, and I sent to her and I said, "Do you think that maybe we could go for dinner and some of my people can ask you some questions?" I haven't heard back from her about that yet, but she's also very well known as a trainer of storytellers out there in Ottawa. So I do have tickets to these concerts should anybody want them, and you can always find me about that. But it's a month away, so you've got time to think about it. Victoria's not that far away. So I have now another story. Because I'm up here, I can say who gets to tell, eh? This is a new story for me, particularly because it comes from Nigeria. So I don't, when you get stories from a new country, I don't really know what a lot of the things mean and what some of the magic is, which makes it a little bit more fun for me. So there was a young girl whose mother asked her to go to the market and take the palm oil that her mother had made and sell it in the market. So the girl went early in the morning, and she was there all day. The sun crossed the sky, and it was starting to get dark, and there had not one single customer until she saw somebody emerging out of the darkness, hurrying towards her, and he said, "I want some of your palm oil, girl. Here's a pot. You fill it." She recognized right away he was a ghost, and he had those hands. Ghosts have really horrible hands. Anyway, but she thought, what could she do? I mean, ghosts are dangerous, but she hadn't earned any money all day. This was her only sale. So she took the big pot and she filled it up carefully, and then she calculated how much he owed, and she told him. He reached into his pocket and got a handful of cowrie shells, which is the currency there, and handed it to her. Ugly hand. Anyway, and she carefully calculated it, counted it out. And then she said, as he's starting to briskly walk away, and she says, "I'm sorry, sir, but you're 1 cowrie short." And he says, "Well, that's too bad, isn't it? You're not getting it." And off he went. And then she thought, what's she going to do? This is a dangerous ghost. But she thought, if she came home with not enough cowries, her mother would be really angry and throw a anger fit. And so she thought, well, ghost mother. And so she ran after the ghost, and she said, "Please, sir, please, pay me the cowrie you owe me, or my mother will beat me." "I don't care," he said. "No, please, just pay me that 1 cowrie. That's all you owe. That's all I need." And he turned to her and he said, "Where I am going, no living person can come on the trail that I am traveling." And she said, "I have to get that cowrie. I am coming with you." And he turned and he walked into the dark forest, and she followed, demanding that cowrie, that he pay that cowrie. And they walked on and on and on. It was a very long night. But when morning came, they were in a country she was astonished at. All the people were upside down, like their heads were like where the dirt was, and their feet up above. But the ghosts seemed to think there was nothing exceptional about this. And they walked along. And then they came to this river. Huge river. But it was not full of water. It was stinking, messy, rotting filth. And he looked at her and he said, "Well, now, you're going to have to cross this if you're going to keep following me." And she said, "I am not going to give up. I will stop when you give me that cowrie." And so he says, "Oh, and is that going to be your attitude to the great river of blood as well? I am not giving up till I have that cowrie. You give me the cowrie, I'm going home." He says, "Oh, well, and then too, we'll have the pleasure of climbing that craggy mountain together then. And after that, the murky woods. All of this is fine with you? Give me the cowrie and I'll go home. But until then, I'm not going home. I am going with you." And so she did. And it was interesting because from that point on, the ghost was not walking ahead of her. He walked with her, and there we went. Now, I mean, she never stopped asking for the cowrie, so, I mean, conversation's a bit limited. But anyway, she made it there. She made it up over that mountain, across that other river, a river of blood, and through the murky wood. Turned out the murk was the least bad of what was going on in that woods. Anyway, they finally reached his land. It was the land of the dead. And his house was right there. And she said, "Now, after all of this, give me that 1 cowrie that you owe me so that I can give the full amount to my mother." And he looked at her and said, "Well, Now, this has been a long trip. I can see that you're tired and you're probably pretty hungry. So the oil has gotten a bit stale in that time. How about you make more of that palm oil, and I'll let you eat the stringy bits left over from the fruit. I'm not eating any stringy bits. You eat them. And he laughed at that. He says, well, I can see that you're probably out of sorts because you're hungry and that. And I have a banana. How about this? I'll give you the inside of the banana and I'll eat the peel. Well, she grabbed the banana and she said, no, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. And she peeled the banana. She ate the peel and gave the banana to him. He laughed about that as well. And he said, well, I can see that you do not want to do anything I tell you to do. She says, no, I am not doing what you tell me to do. You give me the cowrie and I'll go home. And then he said, well, what we can do, you see that calabash tree over there? That's my calabash tree. And all the calabash are ripe right now. I am going to give you permission to pick 3 of those calabashes. 3. And I will give you some advice about that. Don't pick the ones that call to you and say, choose me. No. Pick the silent ones, the ones that are just the dull gray. If you follow my advice, it will be to your advantage to do. And she said, I am not following any of your advice, and I'm not picking calabash trees. Give me my cowrie. And he turned around, and he crossed the line into the land of the dead and went into his house and shut the door. Well, she could not follow him there because she was not dead yet. Clearly not dead yet, very lively at this point. And she was really fuming about this. And she thought, well, what can I do? I'll go over and look at the calabash tree. What the heck? And she goes over there. And as she gets closer, some of the calabashes do talk to her. Come, pick me, choose me. I'm the best on this tree. Choose me. And they were bigger and they were more colorful. And she thought, clearly, there's more in these calabashes than in the little ones. He is trying to get me to pick the bad ones. And then she thought, now, wait a minute. I told him I would never do anything he told me to do. And I've sort of trained him to know that I will do the opposite of whatever he's told me to do. It goes against how I feel about this, but I think that I should obey him this time. That would be the opposite of what he thinks that I'm going to do. Now, it took a bit of will, because she was looking at those colorful calabashes, very noisy, obviously lively, but she followed his advice this time, this one time, and she picked 3 of the gray ones, and off she went. Well, off she went, and she was through the murky woods, up and over that craggy mountain, approaching the river of blood. So she took one of the calabashes and threw it on the ground, and it split open in 2. And out of it came a herd of beautiful horses. And they all followed her, and she laughed. Look at that. And then she gets to the river of the blood, the filth. And she gets past that, and she takes a second calabash, smashes it on the ground, and out of it come herds of sheep and goats and flock of chickens. And all of them follow her home. She gets home, her mom isn't home, so she leaves them all outside grazing and such, thinking this will be a happy surprise when mother gets home. She gets into the house, and she throws the last calabash on the floor, whap, and the whole house is filled with cowries. Never mind one, the whole house is filled with the cowries. And that is the end of the story. And if I could think of a really good snappy line after that, I would. But that's all I've got. That was the end of the story. So she got her one cowrie and many more. Pays to be stubborn and lucky. I get to tell that story tomorrow, too. So I have all my drive down to Victoria to think up a good line. If you can think of a good line for me for the ending, I'll be happy to have it. So our last story for tonight is Kathy White with Sedna. And we heard it in the practice, and we loved it. I'm sure you will too.
I think the final line for the Cowrie story, I would say, would be she got not just one Cowrie, but thousands. That could be it. Okay, switching gear from Cowries to Sedna. Sedna is a story of a sea goddess, Arctic sea goddess. And versions of this story can be found in Inuit culture, but the whole Arctic Circle, if you take it through Greenland, over to Finland, up into Siberia, you'll find versions of Sedna, versions of this story wherever you travel in these lands. So just honoring the indigenous peoples who have carried this story in their hearts. Sedna lived with her father in a very simple hut up in the Arctic. It was very cold and wintry where she lived. But her father was a good hunter, and he would bring home lots of food, and they lived fairly well. Now, Sedna was also very beautiful. And she liked to go out on a still day when the water was very, very calm like a mirror, and actually look at her reflection in the water and comb her hair. Well, when it came time to marry, Sedna was kind of the hot chick of the village. And all the young men would flock around and try and persuade her to marry them. She was having none of it. Nah, not interested. Nah, no thank you. But then, one day, a cloaked stranger appeared on their island. He came by kayak. And he didn't reveal his face, and he stayed hooded. And he started to talk to Sedna. And Sedna was kind of interested. And he started to tell her of how he could catch food and hunt food and all this abundance of life that he lived. And he started to tell her of this beautiful mountain view top place that he lived, and she imagined a castle or a palace. And then finally he said, Sedna, will you marry me? And she said yes. And so they married and they set off in the kayak and they paddled together for days. It took them a long time to get to his island. But as they arrived at the rocky shore, there was not much there. And he took off his cloak, and it turns out he was a shapeshifter. He was a bird, a big black bird. And the view top that she imagined was a palace was just a simple rocky outcrop where he picked her up and flew her, placed her there. And the abundance of hunting and beautiful things to eat was just a dead fish every day he would drop on the ledge. Well, Sedna was beside herself. What have I done? Where am I? Get me out of here. And so she called for her father. Father! Father! And she knew he was days away, but she kept calling, "Father!" And somehow, whether it was her lonely heart or her powerful voice, but way on her father's island, he sensed there was something. He sensed his daughter was calling him, so he got into his kayak and paddled in the direction that he thought she had gone. And after several days paddling, he got, and he could hear her now, "Father!" And he got to the island and he helped her clamber down from that rocky ledge and get into the boat. And they could see the bird starting to come towards them as they paddled. "Paddle, father, paddle." And he paddled. And he said, "Paddle, Sedna, paddle." And she paddled. But the bird gathered his friends. And there were many birds. And they started to bring up a storm of great waves. And the kayak wobbled and almost capsized. And the father said, "Sedna, I'll have to let you go. He wants you back." And he thought, if I take her out of the kayak, then the storm will pass and the bird will take his wife back and it will be better. He feared for his life. And he pushed his daughter over and she clung to the sides of the canoe, of the kayak, and started to capsize it. And he took out his knife and he chopped each of her fingers off. And she fell. She fell into the waters. And each of her fingers became the sea creatures we know today. This was the birth of the whales and the sea lions and the dolphins and the narwhals and the seals from Sedna's digits. And Sedna herself, it is said, sank to the bottom of the ocean, where she continued to grow her beautiful hair, now made of kelp. And they say in these communities in the Arctic that if the hunting is bad, if the fish are not running, then the shaman needs to bang his drum and travel down to the bottom of the sea and comb her kelpie hair so the fish will return again. Thank you.
Carrying on with my lesson, that wasn't a folk tale, that was a myth, which explains how the world comes to be. Oh, there's lots of little folk tales about things like why does the bear have a short tail and things like that. But that's one that's kind of a universal in the Arctic. And I had something else I was going to say, which I cannot remember now, which is fortunate for everyone. Anyway, thank you very much, especially the tellers and such. And I also want to thank Longevity John and Ted for this stage and this opportunity to share with you our stories. And to thank all of you here and far who have or will listen to them and have gone with us to all these different places in the world and in the heart. And on your behalf, I want to thank the tellers. Great job. And our next show is June 4th, and that's the one where I'm expecting our stars from back east to come and join us. I'm really looking forward to that. Now, I gave the title of this tonight to Ted. I wasn't expecting that. And I think, right, Ted? You weren't expecting any of those, I don't think. And I hope the audience was not either. So goodbye until next month, and thank you again.